So what do the Yogyakarta Principles say about sex? The Yogyakarta Principles, of course, are a document issued after a meeting of international human rights experts in the city of Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and then updated 10 years later in a document called the Yogyakarta Plus 10. And they set out the standards under international human rights norms that a government must comply with in order to respect, protect, and fulfill the human rights of LGBT people. Originally, the first set of principles recognized the right to privacy as being one of the primary rights that protects the ability of people to have adult, private, consensual sexual behavior. They also recognized the right to equality with regard to this right. And the principles call on states to repeal criminal and other legal provisions that effectively prohibit consensual sexual activity amongst people of the same sex. And they mandate that ages of consent be equal with regard to same and opposite sex activity. But they really don't go beyond that. The Plus 10 document goes a little farther and has an entire principle devoted to decriminalization. And this is the right to be free from criminalization and sanctions on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or sex characteristics. This calls on governments to repeal criminalization of a variety of things, including adult, private, consensual sexual activity, sex work, abortion, unintentional transmission of HIV, adultery, nuisance, loitering, and begging. And this also recognizes that in many instances, the government will convict somebody not for just sodomy, but also for loitering, lewdness, or some other charge that is triggered by sexual activity. But it does not recognize the human right to engage in private adult consensual behavior. Now, this is something that is, I think, of deep concern to a lot of activists, because sexuality and one's sex life is part of the development of your humanity and part of the growth of an individual as a human being. So there has been a lot of work done to try to get international human rights institutions to recognize the freedom to engage in private consensual adult sexual activity. The World Health Organization's definition of sexual health gets a little close to that. Sexual health is defined as a state of physical, mental, and social well-being in relation to sexuality. It requires a positive and respectful approach to sexuality and sexual relationships, as well as the possibility of having pleasurable and safe sexual experiences free of coercion, discrimination, and violence. Now, that's a definition from the context of health, but you can see that in order to satisfy that definition, human rights plays a large part, because sexual health includes the freedom to be safe, to not be treated unfairly because of your sexual activity, and these are primary human rights concerns. But frustrating as it is, as of yet, no international human rights body has explicitly recognized the freedom to engage in sexual behavior.